We're going to talk about gem creation today and about what gems are, and I'm going to go over some basic gem anatomy. And so gems are one of the most unique and awesome software distribution tools ever made. They're these awesome little suitcases you can pack up and distribute to other developers. Um, and they're not specific. Gems don't have to be specific to Rails applications. Um, there's been gems that have been created to do system patches to help, like the Java Developers Kit run on an older version of Mac OS. So a gem was actually used to publish that software that made the bash settings, the profile settings get updated for that to run. Gems all have one thing in common, though. They're all written in Ruby, and they all are distributable on rubygems.org. So are you guys excited yet for making a gem? Who's ever made a gem before? Yeah? Cool. And who's like newer to Ruby in general? Cool. Okay. So what kind of gem did you make back there? You said you made a gem, but you're newer to Ruby.
Yeah, I just made a simple gem that was kind of building off of Premailer to allow for parsing ERB templates that are used in emails.
Cool. We're going to make two gems today. As in the description, we're going to make a gem that's a wrapper for a City of Chicago data endpoint. Those are really fun to make, but we'll start off with a very basic gem that'll walk you through the steps of creation, and I'll show you how to integrate testing and licenses and code of conduct rules into your gems if you want to participate in those. So let's get started. And I totally want everyone to follow along if they can. We'll do everything together, okay? And if you want to stop and if we want to pump the brakes for a second so you can get caught up, we can just raise your hand and we'll see what that looks like. So who's made a Rails application before? All right. Bundling gems is like the same process from the start as starting a Rails application. It uses a different command, bundle, gem, and then the name, just like Rails new, than the name of your application. So before we get to that, though, let's actually probably do this first. rubygems.org. If everyone can go there, please. And if you want to have the ability for any gem you create to be distributed through Ruby Gems, you're going to have to create an account. So if you don't have an account, why don't we take a minute and do that real quickly? We'll go one step further, and we can pause there for anybody who hasn't caught up yet. Run this command. It doesn't matter where you are, but go to your terminal, and I guess I've made a Chicago Ruby folder for this, and type in the command gem push. And this is a little weird. You'll get an error, but if you're not signed in to your Ruby Gems account, it'll prompt you for your credentials. And that's how you sort of like the way you link your computer with GitHub. That's how you set up your account with Ruby Gems. Yeah. So did you sign up an account? Did you create an account? So you should be able to log in, and you may still get an error, but now you're logged in. So you'll be able to run the rake release task.
So it's supposed to not even give you a chance to log in, right? On the terminal?
Yeah, it should give you a chance to log in.
Oh, it did. It was just like, don't have an account yet, create one, and then HTTP access denied. And then send me back.
Yeah, let me just double check the command. What's that?
The first command.
Gem push.
But I created first.
Yeah, you want to create an account.
Yeah, I have account and just gem push.
Yeah.
Oh. So because I didn't specify the name, that's why I got the error.
Yeah. So it tries to connect to Ruby Gems, and then it realizes you aren't signed in, and then it's kind of like a workaround to get connected to
Well,
it.
it prompts me for the username and the email and
Yeah.
password to sign in. And then it says sign in, but then it says while executing the gem, please specify a gem name, which is
Right.
because I didn't specify a gem name.
Exactly.
Okay.
Hmm? Okay, we'll we'll come back to it. So this is only if you only need to do this if you're planning on if you're planning on releasing the gem to Ruby Gems. So we can still do all the other gem creation and all that without this. We'll come back to that. So, okay, so the next thing you want to do before you start working on any gem is go to Ruby Gems and if you have an idea for a name in mind, go check to see if it's already taken. Because Ruby Gem names are like URLs. They are first come, first serve. And there's nothing more annoying than developing an entire gem and then having to deal with naming problems later on. So if you can just avoid that in the beginning, you'll be better off. Yours is available? Okay. Cool. All right, so I'm gonna try a gem here called Jamie Sample Gem. I bet it's, yep, oh, there we go. No gems found, so we're good. So once you found a gem name that you like, you can run that command, bundle gem, Jamie Sample Gem. Oops. And before you hit enter, here's where you have the opportunity to add some options flags to your gem to let Bundler take care of some things. So you can flag it with test, which will default to RSpec testing. We'll build it into your framework. You can also type in mini test. It also supports that. But if you leave test blank, it'll set you up with RSpec. You can do COC, Code of Conduct. That's the Code of Conduct system is like hey, what's up? Code of Conduct essentially says that if you're going to contribute to this open source project, you want to try to maintain a certain level of professionalism, respect when you're submitting and making changes and whatnot, when you're working with the person's code online. So if you want to include that, it indicates that you're part of that community, like signing up for if you go to, I don't know, if you play games and you want to go to a room that only people agree not to swear on. Whatever, I can't think of a better example. And then there's also MIT, which will attach the MIT user end license to your project. And that's the license that just says that people have to give you credit for your work if they use it. So I'll run it with tests and with MIT. And all that Bundler really does is just creates a folder for you in your file path that you were in already and gives you all these folders and files. And then we can see that because we specified the test, we get an RSpec folder and a spec folder here for our test to run. And we also get our license.txt. That's our MIT agreement right there. If you miss that step, you can always add these text files back in later. And you can manually create the testing environment too. So because we did testing, if you are a test-driven person and you want to start your gem off from the beginning, running tests, right after this you can call RSpec on there. Sorry. Yeah, you call RSpec, and then we have to link up the require. We have to write some require things inside the Ruby files, but yeah. Works right there. So I'm going to subble into here. Yeah.
Did yours ask for code of conduct? I mean, I didn't go to option, but mine asked for code of conduct.
Oh, yeah. The first time you do this, it automatically prompts you about code of conduct. It doesn't ask me anymore. I don't know exactly what the rules are in that one, but yeah. So our file system is pretty Simple. It's a lot simpler than a Rails application, but there's a couple of key files that you're all going to want to know. There's 4 key files, in my opinion, that you should always know about and you should learn first. And that's your gem spec file, which is alphabetically sorted. It's in the root of your gem. And if you click on that, you see a lot of gobbledygook. But essentially, this is your configuration file for your gem, and allows you to set up your, like when you publish a gem, this information has to be included so that they every gem has to have a description behind it. So these to-do indicators tell you that something needs to be changed. So the first gem we're gonna create is a little hand dryer gem. Remember that, right? So why don't we do this? Oh. All right. All right, hope that wasn't confusing. I just wanted to switch to a gem of the name we were working with. So the first thing you can do is start by going to your gem spec file and configuring this stuff here. If you're newer to Ruby, this syntax might look weird to you, but essentially this is like just a non-literal string. It's the same as a lowercase q is the same as a single quote string, and a capital Q is the same as a double quote string. But you don't have to write the quotations on the text in the middle. You know what I'm saying? So,
Can you make this text a little bit bigger, please?
yeah. More?
Yes, please.
Cool.
That's good.
Cool.
Thank you.
All right, so we're going to make a gem that's acts as a hand dryer, whatever. What does that mean? All right, I'm not going to get too crazy with these descriptions here. All right, and then this dot home page is actually kind of persnickety. It really wants a when you try to run this task that it publishes your gem, it'll really kind of freak out on you if you don't have a legitimate URL there. So if we're making this in reality, you'd go to your GitHub and start a new repo, name it the same as your gem. Okay. When you create a gem, Git repo is automatically initialized in that folder, so you don't have to do Git in it. But you do have to do okay, and then just like with any project, just paste those 2 lines there and push your code up. Okay, so now I have a valid URL for the project, and I can just pop that into my spec.home page here. Like, I'm not an expert by any stretch of the imagination. I'm still a beginner myself. This line of code, these couple lines of codes, does anyone happen to know what they're for? Because you can delete them. I think it's if you host your gems.
Yeah, it's working on the internal gem server.
Yeah.
Only one allowed pushing to that instead of the public rubygems.org.
Awesome, thank you. So since we're just pushing up to Ruby gems, we can comment that out. And then you have something that looks a little bit akin to your gem file in a Rails application. This is where you can set dependencies, other gem dependencies. So we're not going to need one for this gem. We will for the next gem. But yeah. So the next key file is the actual code, which is in your library file here under the handdryer.rb. And it kicks you off with the handdryer version file, which makes sure that you pull that it automatically associates the code to the right version in your that you've listed in a file I'm about to get to. But your module handdryer, this is just functioning as a namespace. It's so that you, when you initiate like your GEMS code in another application, you severely reduce the risk of conflicting with another class. So it's not smart to like, I don't even know if I've never tried getting rid of this, but it's there for a reason. That's why you always see in your other code, you'll see hand dryer and then whatever class, and then the method like that. So just as a namespace there. So we're going to create a class inside this module called a dryer. Okay. And we'll create an easy, this is like, once again, just to walk you through the steps of getting this thing up and running. We'll create a method called dry. And let's see here. I think I have to. May have to check that, but okay. So we've got a little module going, and we've got a class inside that namespace, and a method that that class uses. And our next file we want to take a look at is our version file, which is right here under that handdryer folder. And your version number has to be every time you push a new, every time you push or publish your gem or release it, it checks to make sure that you're not trying to duplicate a previous gem version. So Ruby Gems as a community is very good at preventing people from overwriting their old published gems and thereby like potentially breaking dependencies on other people's apps they're using. So it's also, my linter's going off here because it wants me to freeze the version number. And by freezing it, we just make this more like immutable. We can keep it from being altered. I don't know, have you ever seen that? In your experience, have you ever seen a gem version number get changed by the code somehow?
Just to inform you if that happens, because like
Yeah.
if somebody like were to try to update that constant by freezing, you'd get like a warning.
Gotcha. So, there we go. Oops. So, I think we are just about ready to try this gem out. I think I do have a coding error in my handdryer RB. I don't think this is gonna work. I think I'm missing some backticks here. Let's try that. And that's only gonna work on Macs, just so you know. Sorry, it's a system command. So, let me go here. So your commands when you're working on a gem that you're going to want to do, and this is kind of annoying. It's way more complicated to make changes to gem code than it is to make changes to like a Rails applications code. But every time you've got to do rake install. Okay, do it for you again. Okay, should get those messages. And then we're just going to like screw around with this in IRB. So enter your Ruby environment. And then like with your Rails applications, when you put a gem into your gem spec file, to your gem file, Rails handles the require lines for you. But if you're just tooling around in IRB, you've got to require the hand dryer.
You can actually skip this step if you just do language bin/console.
Cool, okay. I never heard that.
Fun fact.
Bin console?
Yeah, you gotta guess at IRB though.
Ah,
Bin slash console.
oh, sorry.
And that'll require your gem.
Cool.
Yep.
Awesome.
For a reinstall every time.
Thank you. That's an
Yeah.
awesome command. All right. So we can now instantiate like a hand dryer. Hoping this works. Dryer dot dry. There we go. Is that dry? So we have to instantiate the object and then call the method on it. And there we go. It makes a noise, just like a real hand dryer. So that's like the basic bare bones way to get in and start like messing with code right away. That's obviously a pretty lame demonstration, but we're going to do something a little more fun, and that's make a Ruby wrapper for, what's that? Say that again?
Terminal?
Yeah.
Are you doing this in IRB?
Yeah, we're calling the gem through IRB. Cool. Alrighty. Another really important file to pay attention to, and it's something that even like really experienced developers are kind of, not always the best about paying attention to, is your README file. Good documentation will like make your gem more successful if people know how to use it. So if you are, this isn't a Markdown topic, we're not talking about Markdown today, but Markdown's great to use if you need a little bit of help. There's a great application called Mao, M-A-M-O-U, I believe, and it's like a Markdown interpreter, so you can type stuff and it gives you like exact feedback of what you've been typing in. There's also online Markdown interpreters that'll show you anybody know of a good one? I'm blanking on one of the names. Macdown? Cool. That's online. Essentially in Markdown, it's a pretty easy language to learn. One hash is like an H1. You can make code snippets by using the backticks and then putting the language that you want. Yeah, it's got a lot of cool uses. It just makes your instructions look a little more easy to read and enjoyable for the person to use. Okay. Alrighty. Let's get started on the Chicago employees. So the city of Chicago has this awesome resource that you can go to, data.cityofchicago.org, and it has all these types of like, well, let's just try one. Let's see here. Let's go to food inspections. And it shows you a formatted table of all these food inspections, and that's cool, but what if you're trying to build a Rails app that interacts with this data all the time? It might be helpful to have a gem that does that for you, and you can just use that gem in your application. So we're going to try to duplicate something like that. Each one of these endpoints has each one of these reports has a SOTA API endpoint. So if you click export SOTA API, you can grab this URL here, and if you have a JSON interpreter or formatter, you'll get a nice, easy to read response like this. If you don't, like that should be the next thing you do on your computer is get a Chrome plugin or get an extension that makes JSON look readable for you. It's super helpful for your future developing things. Right. So this one's like pretty complicated and probably not the best to do a demonstration with. So we're going to look at the City of Chicago employees, and you'll see right away that this is a much more easy to understand for learning purposes API. There you go. So essentially it just gives you, I don't know, a couple thousand, I'm not really sure, I've never counted. One array, real easy to follow JSON data. And so we're going to turn this into a Ruby gem that will give back Ruby objects as opposed to JSON. Cool? Awesome. So I'm going to start a new gem. We'll call this Bundle Gem Chicago Employees. Okay.
Did you use the did you create a new directory?
With what?
New directory?
I'm sorry. But the table's creaking over.
In the new directory.
Yes. Well, I'm working. The bundler gem will create the new folder for you in whatever folder you're already inside of.
Okay.
So your first thing to do after you run the bundler command is to cd into the folder it created. So we do that and we get there. Okay. And okie doke. So first things first. You could also right now, if you wanted to, I suppose you could do your initial commit if you wanted to get that out of the way. Oops. Cool. Alrighty. So go into your GemSpec file and take care of those to-dos. Please. API. Returns Ruby objects based on JSON. And like I said, this doesn't actually have to be, it just needs to be a valid URL, so you can just steal one of your other projects for the moment if you want to just use that URL. But don't forget to change it eventually. If you guys reinvent the wheel based on this gem that we're going to make right now, or it starts the chain on something, don't forget to go back and double check these things and fix them before you release. Okay. Okay, so there's a lot of different gems already out there that you can hit up API endpoints with. We're going to use one today that's very simple. If you've never dealt with this before, like there's OpenURI. You've probably heard of that. We're going to use one called Unirest. So we want to make sure that, like we did how we didn't have to add any dependencies here. We do need to add a dependency to this gem. So we'll call it add, but it's not development dependency, so it's just going to be dependency. Unit rest and do this. If you haven't done this yet, do gem install unirest. Okay. And then what I'm looking for is that version number. So you just want to make sure that you list the version number of the version of the gem you developed the gem with. So the other way you can look this up as well is if you type in gem list local, and that will show you everything you got installed on your computer as far as gems go. So you can just find it alphabetically. Cool? All right. So it's 1.1.2. All right, we look good here.
Did we delete the expect respond?
Yeah, comment it out if you want to, or delete it. What's your name back?
Oh, I'm Jeff.
Jeff. Have we met?
I don't think so, no.
Okay, this is off side note, but maybe you could help me understand. I get an R, like whenever I bundle a gem, regardless of flagging it for tests, I always get an R spec, like testing environment. It sets it up automatically for some reason. I don't know
You're
why.
saying if you put mini tests instead?
No, I don't have to put anything. It just makes it.
Oh, so that's the default, okay.
Yeah, I don't know why, but I tried it on my other machine today, and it doesn't create that same file structure. So I don't know what's going on with that. But did anybody else automatically get a .rspec
Yeah.
file? Yeah. Don't know what's causing that. It might be an updated version of Bundler. I'm not quite sure.
Also didn't put the test option either. So.
For the
Yeah.
first time I did it, I put mini tests as my,
Sure.
and this time it said mini test too, so it's a default, the first time I set it up.
Okay. Strange. Or it's the way it's supposed to be. Who knows? Right. Okay. So we need to. So we're going to go right over to the library folder and enter into that Chicago employees RB file, and you may see this done differently in certain gems. Some gems rely on a separate file to require other gems, but in this case, I think we need to do require unirest. So remember to pull in your dependencies before you start pulling your hair out. So what's the user experience we want people to have? This might be a good reason to go actually look at your README first. You know, like how do we actually use the gem? So you might want to say like, well, to use it, so someone might do this: employees equals. Sorry, my typing's atrocious right now. Employees and employees or e dot all. Let's say we wanted that to happen, right? So that gives us a little bit of a framework to go off. That is what we want to have, and we want someone to be able to store the entirety of that JSON file inside of an array called employees. So we're going to have to create a class of employee. What is the employees? Yeah, employee. All right. and right away we know that we want to have that method, so we're going to do, and they'll see with the way that we call it, employee.all, we're calling a class method. So we want to do self.all, sorry.
So you're making a class method?
Yeah. No, yeah, we're making a class method.
If you go into .bundle/config, you can change your default for the test.
Oh, cool. Show me where,
It should be in your home directory and under in a hidden directory called .bundle.
Oh,
okay,
back at home.
cool. So we do that. We want to, and I'm going to do some, we're going to shorten up this Ruby code. But essentially, I'm just going to start off with some make it work type stuff, then we'll refactor it. But let's call it our Ruby data equals an array, our bulk data, sorry, data is going to equal to, and this is where we use UniRest. And UniRest has these helpful HTTP verb arguments or methods you can call with it. And all you have to do is copy in the API endpoint. In quotes. If you want to like interpolate, string interpolate, which we will do, to put in URL parameters, or sorry, the query parameters, whatever, at the end after the question mark, you would do that by like doing normal string interpolation like this. Cool. But for this one, all we want to do is hit that main endpoint, and we get a big, massive chunk of data. So we'll call body on this, so that we're getting back just the body. And then we can take our bulk data dot each do employee and shovel that over into the Ruby data. Now, who notices what's wrong so far? Then we'll return the Ruby data. Okay, let's see how this works. Cool. So, just copy this directly from here. Look at that. Got a big old array of employees. Pretty exciting, right? Yes, is the right answer, right? But but it's not really Ruby data. We're just taking essentially, it's just taking JSON data and shoving it into an array. And so we're just looking at an array of hashes here. And that's not really what we want, because we may want to do stuff with the actual attributes that we're getting. Like, for example, does job titles, if we look at this endpoint, like, I don't know, do I want to call employee annual salary every time I want to? What if I could just call that salary? Or what if I don't want it to be a string, right? I want to calculate like all the salaries combined. You know? What if I don't want job titles? None of these people has more than one job title on this API, so we'll just call that title. Right? So the way we're at right now, all we're doing is grabbing these hashes and shoving them into this Ruby object, and we can go a step further than that. So we want to create a new method, an initialize method. All right, that takes in input options. And then here, we can start like being specific. So when we initialize a new employee, it's going to have those 4 pieces of data to mess around with. So we can start by just simply doing like @title equals input options title, or sorry, job titles. Right? Yeah. And department equals name and salary. Name and salary. Employee annual salary. All right, and then we can even make that an integer. I don't think anything has, I don't think there's any sense in any of these mentioned, but if you want to make it a float, you can. There we go. Okay, so now when we, instead of just shoving in the employee object into the Ruby data, we want to instantiate a new employee and put that in the Ruby array. So if we do .new and give it the employee JSON data, see that? Okay. Does that make sense to everybody? What we're doing, we're giving back actual Ruby objects instead of just hashes. Well, that's a Ruby object, but we're giving back employee objects. So let's...
So we need an accessors for this?
Yes, we will, because it's pretty useless right now. We'll just get back a report that looks a little bit different than this one, but we won't be able to say like employees.first.title until we give it some assessors or readers. Whoa, that was strange. My keyboard just stopped working for several seconds. Okay. So, reader. No. Okay. So if we put this all together, and we'll come back and we'll refactor this method here in a minute, but I love this new command. That's just awesome. Thank you. We should, I'm just checking this over real quick, be able to do this. And see, now we have attributes. So we can do employees dot first. Okay. Employees dot first dot name. Cool. So it gives us a lot more flexibility. We can now manipulate these things. We can call, you know, blanking on the method, but we'll just do downcase dot capitalize. What's the method that does that in one? Normalize or something, or what is it?
Humanize?
What is it?
Humanize, I think?
Humanize?
Thank
I would not be surprised. It's called that. Okay, let's just see if this works first. Yeah, there we go. So now we can also split that up now. We've only got last name and first name in this data set from Chicago, but we can use the split method and separate those two and return. Let me just copy this in here. You know what? So I can bring up all the first names if I want, just by manipulating their data they provided, which is something you wouldn't be able to do easily without converting it to Ruby. Cool. All right, let's refactor this. I can get this down to a one-liner here in this self.all, but it may be a little long, so this, of course, isn't always. What's that?
So after you run command down, will accept in console. What do you do?
In IRB? Okay, here, let me. All right. Bundle. And then I just followed the very minuscule documentation that we wrote to create this employees object. And then we can now call, and we can also call just first name now. Oh, wait. That must not have saved yet.
I mean, it's IRB.
Yeah.
Did you build it first?
Did it what?
Because for me it doesn't work, it doesn't recognize the constant Chicago employees. Did you do anything else before that?
You haven't been able to do any of that?
Oh, would you have to add into the reader as well?
Yep, you're absolutely right. Yep. Not really the first name, but we could go a step deeper and separate that more. Are you still having trouble with that? Getting any of it to work? Okay, we're gonna,
Maybe after.
yeah, we're gonna, like, is anybody else also behind or wants to try out? Like, this is my first one of these guys, so do we normally sort of like try out some other APIs or start a new bundle? It's up to you. We could also write a new method if you want. Like if we wanted to find the endpoint also allows you to do stuff like this. Let's see, police. Right, so you can specify which, you'll get only police results. It takes parameters as any of these arguments.
How do you do the documentation for how to use that API? Like, how do you know what query parameters and stuff are available?
From I think from messing around with this API actually. I think I might have just or been told that they existed, but yeah.
It was just like,
Oh, it's working now? Nice. Okay. So if you wanted to like search for a particular type of result and filter them down a little bit, we could also do a little of the old find. And this will take in like parameter options. Jeez, oh Pete's. Are you guys losing your minds listening to me and typing this poorly? Okay. So we can just sort of apply the same logic down here. Except we'll add this little bad boy in here. So let's make this simpler. I will do that for this. Or you know what, I'll just do it this way. So we can, there we go. So we just added a method that lets us feed it a department we're looking for, and we'll get the results of that inquiry. So all we're just doing is mimicking the options you have available to you on the API when you type it in your URL and giving you back Ruby objects. And you can get into like passing it more and more. You could make all the like you didn't have to do just department. You could do a find and give it any of the parameters and have it calculate that. Okay, but like I said, let's unnecessarily shorten this to the point of beyond readability, just for the fun of it. Boom. There you go. That's technically one line using your math function. Cool. So, if you guys want to like start from the beginning or create a new one? Or,
Would you normally create more methods for this?
create what?
Create more methods from the existing?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's a pretty simple interface. It's just this endpoint can't do all that much, so there might be more stuff you could think about possibly doing with it, calculations maybe,
Sure.
if you wanted to.
Find who's got the most salary.
Yeah, exactly. Let's see if we can write that. You want to try to write that? Sure. All right. It's a hangout, right? Or a meetup? Sorry.
Yep.
So let's see. Highest paid. And I think we'll want to make this a class method too. We'll borrow from the all method here. We'll have to store this. Okay. Let's help me out. How do we write this out? We've got an array of employees. Do. I'll take forever. I even simple things I have to go look up. So if anybody's got a way that we could.
We go through every one of them and put it on stack. And if it's higher than the curve.
Okay. Cool.
Or sort,
Let's do
or
that.
sorted by.
Yeah, I guess you could sort it too.
You can sort it
Want to do
by-
that and to return the first?
Yeah, sorted by,
But
yeah,
on
sorted
array
by.
you have max, you have the.
We've got Max. Can we pass Matt? Can we pass an argument to Max?
Then you have to go into the employee document and find the salary.
Yeah. Let's see here. Let's see.
What do you need to return, name of the employee?
Yeah, we've got a max buy, so we can run.
Just amount?
Yeah,
Yeah, the by
we can
itself.
do. Use that max buy. That takes. We can do employee dot salary. Okay. It looks like it'll work. Oh, max buy lets you also pass it a argument. You can do like the top three. Whatever. Let's try that. Highest paid 3. Let's see what this looks like.
Thanks. That's good.
Thank you, thank you. Please work. There we go. Boom. Let's see what those are by age. Let's see. 170,000, 162. So seems like it works.
One something, two.
Yeah.
I can't see what that did.
Yeah, sorry about that. Bleeding over on the edge there.
Oh,
So we can just now, like, you do stuff with your gem, you update your documentation, and when you feel like you have something that could be used by other people, let's just check to see if this is already out there. I don't think it will be. No. So this is kind of shitty of me, but hopefully it's really hard to get a gem pulled because obviously the community depends upon it, and like with this NPM thing that just went down, like that's why Ruby Gems is the way it is. So it can, what's up, Jen? It protects the community. So if I do this, I'm taking up a name that, like, I don't know, it seems like it might be pretty useful, but I know there is a way to pull them. I'm not too versed on it yet, but we'll just, for the hell of it. So when you've got something you think is ready to go, just do, I think it's just rake release. Yeah. And this command will throw you all sorts of errors, yet if it's not committed, it has to be pushed to your repo online, I believe.
And that's where week 0 in.
Yeah. So let's see here. We'll do git and commit. Ready to release for no one. Let's see what else it's going to tell me. Yep. I want some remote, so I need to set up in the gem spec. Like, we actually need to go make this. Hey, it's me. Now what are you going to tell me? Look at that. Okay, so now if we search for that again, what do you know? We published a gem that is completely almost useless. But you get the idea. That's it. I mean, it's just that easy. Like, and there's a lot of stuff that you'll want to keep learning about in here. But those 4 files are the bread and butter of this whole thing. So if you can get something good there, and just like, it's a good starting point. It'll get you comfortable working with gems. And so I'd encourage you to like start a gem with a test-based, or like a test-driven motive behind it, because testing's so important to gems, especially because if you're a gem creator and you start making revisions to your gems and you don't test them, and you break something in your gem, it's not the same as breaking something in your own application. You breaking something in a gem affects everyone. Like, so if your gem fails because you didn't carefully build a test suite that covers it, like, you could really screw people's projects up. So they say, like, test-driven development is super important in gem creation. So just try to remember that. Yeah. Do you guys want to sort of just like work on some stuff yourself? I'm kind of done. We've got knowledgeable people in here, and we can. Yeah. Yeah. And I think, watch this, if you try to, let's see if we can make this happen. I'm not actually going to make a method here, but git add. And it's push orange master. Okay, so notice we changed the code, but we didn't change the version number of the gem. So I should get a warning. Yep. So it errors out because we're trying to push new software on top of an old gem number. So anytime you do this, you have to follow semantic versioning and just change your, like, I'm not good at semantic versioning yet. What would we have just done, Ben? 0.1? Yeah? So now if we go and repeat the steps.
This isn't gem gang right now, so would that remove?
Yeah.
Would that pull it? From-
Like I said, those are new. I haven't experimented with those all that much yet. But. Okay, let's try it now. Cool. So it starts tracking our version history for us right there. So I'm working on like in preparation for this, I wrote a big long blog entry that kind of walks through what we did. If anyone wants it, I want to throw that command, my favorite new command in there, edit it that way, and maybe send it around to you guys. I think I'll maybe link it on the page or
Yes.
maybe that page. Cool. Yeah. So there's some other people that I graduated with in here. Around here, say hi and Dawn. So if you guys want to hang out for a minute, I'm more than glad to chill for a minute and can turn on some music or whatever. Just work on stuff. If you want.
It's gonna be on Chicago Ruby.
Hmm?
Said your blog is gonna
Yeah.
be on Chicago Ruby.
Yeah, I'll put it on Chicago Ruby. What's up? Thanks for coming.
Great.
Oh,